All right, welcome everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. My name's Renee Summers. I'm the course coordinator for the Bachelor of Social Work. It's wonderful to meet you all. This is Louise. Louise, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi everyone, I'm Louise Butler and I'm the coordinator for the Masters of Social Work. So Renee and I decided we would do our presentation together today rather than separating them out, and we'll get a sense of who you are and which program you're in shortly as well.
And another very important person for you to know sitting down here is Heidi Barber. Heidi's one of our enrolment and course advisors. So if you have any questions about your study plan or your enrolment, we would generally ask that you submit a request via Ask Flinders, and that will probably end up going to Heidi, who will be the first kind of port of call to answer your questions around that. It'd be great to get to know you a little bit too. I'm curious, how many of you enrolled in the Bachelor of Social Work? Oh, we're very well represented. And the Master of Social Work? Also very well represented. Brilliant. Excellent. So this is going to be really informal. We're going to have a chat and talk through some things. So stop us at any time to ask a question, make a comment, and I'm sure we'll have lots of time at the end for questions and to kind of chat through things as well. So I want to start with an acknowledgement of country. So Nina Marani, we recognise that Flinders Social Work operates on the traditional lands and waters of Kaurna peoples, and we pay respects to elders past, present and future. We acknowledge their sovereignty and continued responsibility to care for country. We respect the importance of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledges, languages and spirituality and relationship with country. And we're committed to truth-telling about the history of social work education and practice in this state, and to working in partnership with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and communities to work towards reconciliation. So social work has a pretty sorry history as a profession. You know, we were a part of the stolen generations and, you know, very much involved in assimilation policies. So it's really important that we acknowledge our history as a profession, and decolonising social work is something that we're really committed to at Flinders and is part of our curriculum, but also something that we have a long way to go on as a profession as well. So we thought we might start by just introducing ourselves and telling you a little bit about us and what social work means to us. Did you want to go first, Louise?
So I've been a social worker for such a long time. Every year I think, I've got an updated date of how long that's been. And so I've been a social worker now for 33 years. And I was one of those people, of which some of you may be, who went into social work straight out of high school. And it was not long before I did that where you couldn't come straight out of high school and go into social work. You had to be 21 and have to have some real life experience. So that changed just a couple of years before I did the Bachelor of Social Work here in South Australia. And I was really interested to work with young people. I said this to some groups we were talking to in the foyer. I was really interested in working with young people who were homeless. Just previous to me finishing high school, there had been a big statement from the Prime Minister saying that we would no longer have any child live in poverty, and here we are all these years later, and sadly we still do have Australian children living in poverty. But I was really motivated by Bob Hawke's statement about that and wanting to make a difference for young people. I felt that I'd had quite a privileged life, and I felt I really wanted to make a contribution. So I did social work and then worked with young people for a couple of years, and after that I've been on such a diverse journey through areas that I knew nothing about, and when I look back and I think of what I knew then and what I know now, it is so very different, and it's been the very best of professions to have, because I've done lots of things that have taken me to another thing, and I have followed my interest, and I've not stopped being passionate in all those years about social work. So I started off working in education, working with young people in the education system as a social worker, and then I moved to London and was a social worker for several years in child protection and managed a child protection unit in the East End of London, which was really interesting, very different, a lot of court work, a lot of child protection type work. I loved it, travelled overseas for a while, and social work really allowed me and enabled me to do that. It was very easy to work in another country. And then when I came back, I worked in Melbourne for Department of Human Services and did policy. So I did a Master's in Public Policy and was really interested in shifting from just thinking about individuals and the individual casework that I was used to start thinking about big picture policies and structures and human service delivery systems, and think about how more people could benefit from change through those systems. So I was a policy advisor for a minister in disability in Victoria for a while. And then I came back to South Australia actually and worked at UniSA, where I met Renee. And Renee worked at UniSA as well, and I worked in field education in social work, and that has been another enduring area that I have really loved, helping students or supporting students through that journey of understanding professional practice. And then my very big overriding area of interest and passion is disability, and I have got a very, very narrow and specific area that I have specialised in, which is behaviour support. And specialist behaviour support is a combination between looking at how environment should change for people and how people need to make some adjustments or learn new skills to adapt to their environment. And that's the area I have worked in up until last year. I worked for the NDIS in the Quality and Safeguards Commission, and after working in disability in clinical work for a long time. But in between that, I went back to the UK and managed an area, a safeguarding area, for another 4 years. So, I've had quite a different kind of journey, but it's all been really interesting. And whenever anyone says to me, oh, you know, why would you want to be a social worker? You may have heard some of those comments yourselves from people. Social work seems very stressful. Why would you want to do that? And I think I genuinely can say that social work has served me well, because I have enjoyed all of the different jobs that I've done, and it's allowed me to do direct practice work, but also some pretty big picture policy change work. So I really hope that you come as interested in whatever has brought you here, but also open to the idea that you may now go on a journey that you, at the moment, don't really necessarily know what it's going to look like. So I guess there's a bit of suspend expectations for a little while and let the journey take you forward. And you, Renee?
Brilliant, Louise. Thank you. There you go. I think you're right, Louise. That's one of the brilliant things about social work, is the diversity of it and the opportunity to move around and explore different fields of practice without necessarily having to retrain. So most of my work as a social worker has been with young people from refugee backgrounds. I worked for a long time at the Australian Refugee Association and at STARS, the survivor, who work with survivors of torture and trauma. And my PhD research then focused on young people from refugee backgrounds and their experiences in South Australia. But I've also worked in palliative care, so working with people who are dying and their families. I've worked on a ward in a hospital, in a country hospital, and I've also worked in foster care, so supporting foster carers who are caring for children who are under the guardianship of the minister. So that's a little bit about me, and again shows kind of how diverse social work can be. And I guess I studied social work because I was really interested in working with people, and lots of people sort of start out saying, I'd like to help other people, but I was also kind of interested in that bigger picture that Louise talked about, or the kind of the broader social context that shapes people's lives. And I guess as a teacher, I'm really passionate about teaching, and I enjoy supporting students to develop the skills and the knowledge and the values that you need for social work practice. And I guess just to chat a little bit about social work is a profession that's really committed to social justice and working towards social change. So we like to say in social work that we welcome the troublemakers, and what I mean by that isn't being a rebel without a cause, but being willing to trouble or to challenge the way things are in society. If you're looking to contribute to a fairer or to a more inclusive society and to address some of the big issues like domestic and family violence or racism or homelessness or poverty or the oppression of particular groups in society, then you've come to the right place. So welcome. As social workers, we say social work is a very values-based profession. So the 3 core values of the Australian Association of Social Workers are social justice, respect and professional integrity. So that's what really drives us as a profession. But in doing the work as well, we don't just kind of make it up. It's about applying social work theories, social work methods and skills to support individuals, families, groups, communities to improve their well-being, but also to address injustice and to address inequality. So social work is quite eclectic, so we kind of draw on knowledge from psychology, we draw on some knowledge from sociology and from social policy as well, and we kind of integrate that to, as Louise said, to kind of work at that interface between people and their environments and broader social structures. So another way we can say that is we say that we pay attention to both the personal and the political. So we're kind of looking at both and at how they interact. So I think that's all I wanted to say to introduce ourselves. Did you want to?
You mentioning social workers being the troublemakers, Renee, just reminded me, I had someone come and speak to me a couple of months ago and feeling a little bit unsure about going into social work because they were worried that it would require of them to be a really radical person, which wasn't how they saw themselves, and maybe be a very loud and militant troublemaker. But when we talk about be a troublemaker, be a disruptor, we mean, we don't necessarily mean capital T or capital D. What we mean is be willing in your way to come in and make changes. And that might be with a very quiet voice, and it may be with some behind the scenes work. It may not be very loudly and militantly making changes. It could mean at times chipping away. So don't be put off by that image of social work either. We certainly are all about making changes, but we're not necessarily asking you to give up your whole identity and who you are at the moment either. Yeah, let's do that. Get to know each other a little bit and try to, just introduce yourself. Just get some ideas about the other person, what's brought them here, and why did you choose to study social work? And what Renee and I talked about is only a little snippet of social work, but does that resonate with you? Is that what you thought you would be coming for? So shall we give, how much time? 5 minutes? Just have a chat. You don't have to report back. Just talk to each other. Thanks.
You might need to move around if you're not sitting next to anyone.
So, everybody, thanks for doing that, and thanks for having a chat with each other. We take pride in social work that students usually connect in with each other. We're in a time where there is a lot of external topics that you're able to do in both programs, but it's also good to connect with other students and hear about what brought them here, and also start to talk about what your areas of interest are. So thank you for that. I hope that confirms for you you're in the right place. This is where we want you to be. We've got a photo up there that is of some of our staff, and when I look at that, they're a happy bunch and a collegial bunch, and I like that photo because it says to me this is social work. It's a diverse group of people, although we'd note that that is all women in that photo. So perhaps not as diverse, and perhaps not as diverse in cultural background, but there is more to our staff than that. There is a really rich and diverse group of people, and Luke just acknowledging one of our staff members here as well. So you will find right from the first topics that you take in social work, there is people who have been social workers, who've got lots of different experiences, as Renee and I talked about, but also bring their own areas of specialisation, but also bring their own stories as well, or their own experiences and backgrounds. And hopefully, as you spoke to each other, you're starting to get a sense of that. We really value diversity in social work. Do you want to?
Sure. So we've included this. This is the website for the AASW, or the Australian Association of Social Work. And we just wanted to put this in because whether you're enrolled in the Master of Social Work or the Bachelor of Social Work, you're enrolled in a professional degree. So what that means is when you graduate, you're eligible for membership of the Australian Association of Social Workers. At the moment, social work isn't a profession that requires registration, but there is a bill before the State Parliament at the moment, which seems to be progressing through very positively. And so we're likely to see social work actually being a registered profession in South Australia in the next few years, which means that you would need to have that eligibility and membership of the ASW to be able to practice. So being in a professional degree is a really good option at the moment and will position you well kind of moving forward. And I guess, you know, we've included this because we'd love to invite you to perhaps think of yourselves right now as social workers or student social workers, and think about over the next 2 years or over the next 4 years how you might develop your kind of professional identity as a social worker and what we call your practice framework. And I kind of think of a practice framework like a triangle, so being made up of your knowledge and theories, you know, your values and ethics, but also the skills that you'll develop over the next few years. So we'd really love for you to kind of start engaging with you know, other students and with staff in a professional manner, and to set yourself as a developing social worker. Did you want to add anything to that, please?
So I coordinate the final placement for the Masters students, and as part of that, in the very final session, which is quite often the final session that students are required to do, we come back to asking you to think about your professional identity and where you are now on that day, and after doing 2 placements and after doing all the stuff you're going to learn. So it's a great opportunity to get you all today, before you start, to start thinking about, well, who am I as I go into this program? And remember that for that final session that you will do at the end of your placement, thinking about your professional and personal identity and how they may change. You were doing the first half.
Yeah, sure. Yes, absolutely, of course. change the field of practice that you're interested in?
There are different areas we are going
Yeah.
to do for our placement, right?
Yeah.
As the first few maybe weeks, we don't have no idea about social work, what kind of stuff we are
Yeah.
facing about it. So if I choose it, such as I have chosen to dealing with the individuals, so then can I change my field into groups?
Absolutely, and you'll actually need to develop skills and experience in all of those areas. So, if you do your first placement in a particular area, it's not going to lock you into that. Did you want to add to that, please?
And in fact, it's even more broad than that, because we can't guarantee that you will get a placement in your particular area of interest. What we do provide are placements that provide you the opportunity to learn to be a social worker, and you may not end up getting that specific area of interest, although the placement team do try to do that, give you your area of interest. It's our goal that you come out of this program as a broad social worker able to work in a diverse range of areas. So you're not locked into anything at this stage, and as you prepare for placement, you will have lots of opportunities presented and have to think about different things. So try to keep your mind open at this stage about what that might look like. No. And you do not have to lock yourself into any one thing. It's not like when you're a doctor and you become an oncologist and you specialise in cancer and that's all you do. Social work will allow you, as Renee said earlier, to travel down a lot of different paths and apply those skills and that knowledge into different areas. So no one's locked in, even right till the end.
We talk about social work as a generalist profession, so it's about developing the sort of general theory, knowledge, skills and values, and then you can apply that to different fields of practice. So, and you can learn that more specialist knowledge about those different fields of practice on the job. So as Louise said, you're not locked into a specialisation now. So we wanted to talk about some of the expectations that come with being enrolled in the Master of Social Work or the Bachelor of Social Work. So as we said, social work is a professional degree. So that means that in order to be eligible for membership of the Australian Association of Social Workers, there's certain kind of accreditation requirements that we need to meet, or there's certain expectations of staff in terms of what we provide, but also of students as well. So one of those expectations of the Australian Association of Social Workers is that you attend on campus for 20 days of face-to-face learning across your degree. So some of you may be here today, or maybe some people listening to this recording might be enrolled in the online or the external version of the Bachelor of Social Work or the Master of Social Work, but there will still be particular topics where you need to come on campus. Often that will be for an intensive that is taught across a week, so that you meet that requirement of 20 days of face-to-face learning. So in the Bachelor of Social Work, there's 4 topics that have a 5-day intensive. So even if you're planning on doing everything online, you would still need to come in at 4 points across the degree. Saying that though, in the context of COVID, there have been some changes to that, and there are times where we're not able to conduct intensives on campus with large groups of people, and so during those times we have special provision from the Australian Association of Social Workers to do that online instead. But we'll keep you posted and kind of updated about that as that happens. Does that make sense?
And it can change quite quickly.
Yes, yeah. And the other thing that's worth kind of pointing out as well, for the Bachelor of Social Work, even if you've enrolled kind of online or on campus, you can still choose to take each topic either online or on campus. So you might have initially thought, right, I'm going to be fully online, and then you might think, actually, I'd like to come in for 1 or 2 topics so I can meet some other people and build some relationships. Would you say it's the same for the Master of Social Work, Louise? Yep, absolutely. Do you want to talk about the field education placement?
Yes. So a lot of people know, and a lot of questions are usually asked about the field education placements, and there is 2 requirements for placement, and they are both 500 hours, and that is clearly a requirement from the ASW. It's a diverse range of placement areas that you can go to. Some placements have a social worker on site, and it is quite a traditional social work placement, and other placements are not do not have a social worker on site. They have a different type of human service professional, and then we from Flinders provide a social worker for you to integrate that theoretical knowledge into your practice. So there would be an on-site supervisor who would guide you in your daily activities, but then a social worker would come in and meet with you on a regular basis to help you understand and make sense of social work in the context of what you're doing. Now, have a think about those placements well in advance, because for the Bachelor students, you've got a fair bit of time, but for Master's students, it comes up very, very quickly. You need to make sure that you have worked through how you're going to manage being on placement for 500 hours and also manage your family, your work, your social life, or whatever it is that you prioritise in your life. If you feel that there are elements for you that would you would find challenging on placement, or you need to have particular consideration for, you might need to speak to health and counselling and get a additional study plan, or get some consideration for whatever might be going on for you. We want to make sure that we set you up for success. So make sure that if you need to be part-time, for example, that you go and get go and see health and counselling to see why that might need to be the case.
Bachelor of Social Work, at what stage do you begin placement?
So there's a placement in 3rd year, and then in the first half of the year, and then a placement in 4th year in the second half of the year. Yeah.
So that's, as I said, Bachelor students have got a while to kind of work that stuff out, but it is very pressing for those of you in the Masters of Social Work. And there is a good preparation for that. We do understand it's a significant component, and it's very different to other types of university teaching. We have a work integrated learning team, and they are a team that sits out of our discipline, but they organise all the placements, and they'll be reaching out to you and organising your placement. Then once you're placed, you come to the field education team, of which I'm one of the topic coordinators, and we look after you in the sense we help you work through the academic requirements of field education. So you go out to practice, and then we support your learning through that process to make sure that you understand the professional components of practice.
Louise. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is inherent requirements. So in social work, there are some essential requirements, or kind of certain abilities, skills and behaviours that are needed to kind of participate in and progress and graduate from the social work program. So just, you know, for example, if you were studying paramedics, you might have to do a physical test, for example, and make sure that you reach certain requirements to enter the profession. So we don't have any physical requirements, but there are other essential requirements that you need to be in social work and to stay in social work. So if you haven't read through them already, have a look at the study social work page, and down the bottom there's a link to inherent requirements. Make sure you familiarise yourself with them, and if you feel that you might have difficulty meeting any of the inherent requirements, you're very welcome to contact Louise or I and have a conversation about that and kind of work through it together. It's also important to point out that prior to going on placement, you'll need to undertake a national police check and also screening assessments with the Department of Human Services for working with children, working in aged care, and in disability. So if you have a criminal history, that might be something that you want to meet with us and talk about as well. It doesn't preclude you from the degree, but it might make it difficult to find a placement because there are, so it will depend on the nature of the history and also the timing of the offence in terms of how that might impact on you. So again, please come and have a conversation with us about that. We also have a charter on professional conduct for student social workers. So from today, you'll have access to a flow site for each of your topic, and you'll find this charter in the flow site. So that outlines our kind of expectations for students both on and off campus in terms of how you kind of relate with others, how you manage yourself and so on. So again, please familiarise yourself with that. Do you want to talk about RPL?
A lot of students are interested in the idea of RPL because we recognise we have people come into the social work program in whichever the Bachelor and the Masters of Social Work who have history and experience and have done other things before they have eventually found themselves here in social work. So sometimes people are interested and able to apply for, sorry, I just checked that the microphone was on, for recognition of prior learning for topics that they have done in other courses or other degrees, and also for experience in the field. So if you think when you look through the topics in either the Bachelor or the Masters that you have done a topic that sounds very similar or that you think could be considered almost the same, you can go through Ask Flinders and look at the requirements for recognition of prior learning, and then that comes to either Renee or myself for us to look at. Some are very straightforward and easy, and it's easy to see, oh yes, they did that topic at Deakin and that translates very well into this topic here at Flinders. And other times it's not as clear and we have to kind of work some things out and check some things out. So those can sometimes take a while, but it's worth quite often having a look at. If we are not able to offer recognition for prior learning, we'll give you that reasoning about why that is. If we do say, no, that topic, you can't have credit for it, you would need to do that topic, I really encourage you to understand that we do that because we want to set you up for success. And we know that it can be challenging going out there and being a social worker. And all the topics that we have in the different courses are there for a specific reason. We know that they prepare you for what you're going to have to work with out in the field. So I encourage you to think about it from that perspective. There is also provision for you to apply for recognition for prior learning for one placement, your first placement. It's got some very strict criteria, so I really encourage you to have a look at what that criteria is, because it's a lot of work to put the application in. You need evidence, you need referees from social workers, qualified social workers, and it needs to essentially be, or you need to evidence that you have done work that would be equivalent to a first year placement, and have a social worker sign that off and say, yes, that person did work in this area, and they can verify that. It is a lot of work, so make sure you look at it very carefully before you go down that journey, because I can only imagine it must be very disappointing if you put in all of that assessment work and then we unfortunately are not able to approve that. So, but that is definitely an area that works very well for some people. Did anyone have any questions about RPL? it's not a conversation in the first instance. It's that online application. If you have a look at that, it comes to our team. So I would be one of the people. There's several of us. We get quite a lot of applications, so we take it in turns. So it may come to me or it may come to one of our colleagues, but we usually work on that together as a team. Yeah, but it's definitely our guys who do that.
And if you had any questions about credit or RPL, you can always kind of submit a request via Ask Flinders, and then that question will get directed to the right person. So sometimes it might come to our enrolment and course advisors, or if they need academic advice, then it might come to us as well. Brilliant, thank you, Heidi. Just to add to that in terms of credit as well for the Bachelor of Social Work, we do have credit agreements with a couple of TAFE courses where you automatically receive certain credit for certain topics. If you've undertaken a different TAFE course, you may or may not also be eligible for credit. So again, it's worth putting in a credit request through Ask Flinders and that will come to us. The other thing I would say is in line with the accreditation requirements of the AASW, there are a number of topics that we're not allowed to credit. So we're not allowed to credit what are seen as core social work topics. So even if you've done something that feels very similar at TAFE or at another training organisation, we may not be able or allowed to credit that, unfortunately. Shall we go to the next slide?
Yeah. So this is the MSW topics that people will be familiar with because you'd know what you're coming into. And they're in sequential order for now. I would just forewarn people that there is going to be a couple of changes and coming up over the next couple of years, and I'll talk about what they are when we get to those points. So people who come into the MSW are people who have had some background or an undergraduate degree with a human or social science and behavioural science background. And so we would expect when people come to the Masters of Social Work, they've got some familiarity with some of the concepts that we would be talking about. It's only 2 years, and so it's a bit jammed-packed or action-packed, and you'll see that you go out on placement not that long after you first come into the Masters of Social Work. It all happens in the second semester you are studying, so within that first year for most people. So we start off by really giving you a solid introduction of social work theories, and Renee does that for us, which is so brilliant, and it gives you that insight into a bit of where social work came from, but also some really core theories that social workers use in contemporary practice. And then social work with diverse populations, and we've alluded to that a bit about the diversity in social work. So that is definitely covered, that diversity in the people we work with. I've highlighted in red the engaging in professional context because that is a topic. That topic is a prerequisite. So you have to pass that topic in order to go on placement. And that is a really strong skills topic where you will learn a lot of the social work professional interpersonal skills. Of course, you come with a great range and array of interpersonal skills already, but these are professional social work skills. And we have a skills lab where you will be working with the topic coordinator, Chris, to develop all of those skills that you will need to use when you go out on placement. And then you do a placement. So the next one is the complexities with children and families. And many of you will do that in that sequence, but that's one of the topics that will soon change to second year. And we're changing that because it's a topic that deals with a lot of child protection issues, and students feel that they understand the service system and the complexities better in their second year than they do in their first year. And what we found and what we're working on is feedback from students that said, before I go on placement, what I really need is a better understanding of where social workers work, all the areas that social workers work in, the organisations that employ social workers, and how those organisations function. So we're going to bring in a new topic in that space and move that group down, that children and families. So then you'll see some other topics there that you will go through, and then toward the end again do a final placement. And you'll see we've designed topics to give you a really diverse range of things that prepare you for practice. So even if you're feeling a little bit now, I'm not quite sure what social workers do, it's a journey. And by the end, we anticipate, or we know, that you come out with a good understanding of what social workers do. So that's the Masters of Social Work.
Thanks, Louise. So let's have a little look at the Bachelor of Social Work. So as mid-year entry students, you'll be starting with that second row there, the semester 2 of year 1. So this semester you'll be doing interpersonal skills. So that's another topic taught in the social work skills and simulation labs to start developing your professional skills. Indigenous studies, contemporary health issues, and the psychology of surviving and thriving. And then next semester you'll do the top row, so introduction to social work, which, kind of introduces you to the profession of social work and some of the different fields of practice that we work in, and also looks at the history of the profession, an introductory politics topic, psychology 1A, and the sociology of everyday life. So as I said before, social work is very eclectic and it draws on a number of different disciplines. So the first year is really focused on building your foundational knowledge in those disciplines, so you can kind of incorporate that and use that knowledge in social work. I won't read through the whole thing, but were there any questions about the social work study plan? So you can see there the topics that are highlighted are have compulsory attendance. And then you can see there's a field education placement in 3rd year and then another one in 4th year. Any questions about that?
And again, you can talk to the course advisor about what topics you do as you move through. Sorry, you can speak to a course advisor and put a request through Ask Flinders if you're unsure about any of that stuff. But we've got the lovely Heidi here today. Are you happy to take questions later? Yeah. So everyone really is here to help. We want to help you on this journey. Yeah, I feel like we did cover that. I think sometimes people are surprised. I would just mention that social work is an evidence-based profession. We don't just send you out there to be you, doing what you would do in your private life. It is a profession where we draw on, as Renee said, a range of theories and approaches. And I can very, very honestly say that in my practice I've really been required to be evidence-based, and it is not as some people think it's just a profession where you just engage with people. It's a profession that has got a real strong basis with knowledge and with theory, and all of that you'll learn on your journey through. But I probably would just draw out that we do teach a range of those interpersonal skills, as well as start encouraging you to think about those big picture policies, and also remind you that research is a significant part of social work, because it is the way that we find out, learn and develop about the social issues that we're faced with, we use that research to help to guide us. And in my career, I've seen some really significant changes about how we do things and what we do based on some really strong research that has emerged in the profession. We've got very strong research history in social work at Flinders. So you'll hear more about that as you go through, and some of you may also be finding that is an area of strength for you, and there may be opportunities for students to do research through honours or beyond that as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Louise. So we've got a couple of minutes left, so it might be a good time to kind of open up the floor. Are there any questions, anything you're feeling a little bit uncertain about for next week? It doesn't matter how small or silly you think it might be. I'm sure if you're wondering about something, then someone else probably is as well. So, yes. So it varies depending on the topic. So if we go back to the study plan, in first year there's one topic, interpersonal skills, which you'll likely do this semester, that has compulsory attendance. Then in second year, in the first half of the year, there's two topics, and then another one in second year, second semester. So if you're ever unsure about your study plan and what topics you're doing when, speak to our enrolment and course advisors, and you can do that by going through Ask Flinders. Also, if you just Google a topic with the code and type in Flinders, you can access the timetable for that topic too and see when it's scheduled for. So if you want to kind of book that week out in advance from work or something like that, you can see all those dates now. So, okay. Any other questions? Take it that means people are feeling okay then? Yeah, great. Well, it's awesome to to meet you and to see your excitement and enthusiasm, and we're really looking forward to working with you and getting to know you over the next few years. So be in touch with us, be in touch with the enrolment and course advisors. Yes, go for it. Oh, let me just ask Heidi. Sorry, Heidi, do you know there was an email about interpersonal skills and its start date? Okay, then I'd follow that advice.
An email, that would be correct.
Yeah, great. No need to apologise.
Always check your timetable. So there's a topic
Yeah.
on the course rule. There's always a link to the topic timetable. That is always going to be the most up-to-date information.
Yeah.
So yeah, always just go with what's on the system.
Yeah. And that's a really good point to make, because things will look different from topic to topic, particularly in the context of COVID. So one topic you might have a face-to-face lecture, another might do it online. So it's always good to check the timetable or check with the topic coordinator if you're not sure. So any other questions before we wind up? Yes.
Enroll in
Yes.
that now.